We're building a game today, this time with one line of JavaScript. In my previous video, I built a browser game without writing any JavaScript. I used Livewire and PHP. And I asked you whether you wanted to see a follow-up video, and apparently you do. So here we are. We're still working on our Mahjong game. Today we're going to write exactly one line of JavaScript code while exploring some more Livewire stuff. We're also designing a new variation of our game and talking about proper abstractions. Oh, and I have a very important question for you at the end of this video, because we won't be able to finish this project without your help. So definitely stay until the end. Let's begin. First things first, I really wanted to add global key bindings. It would make development and testing so much easier, and I think it improves UX as well. So I wanted to figure out how to do it with Livewire, and apparently you can emit Livewire events to your backend with one line of JavaScript code. So if we add a global key down event listener and trigger a Livewire event, we're basically sending key presses to our backend and can do whatever we want with it. My implementation is rather simple because I only wanted to hook into keys like H for showing a hint and S for shuffling the board. So I didn't really bother detecting meta key presses and key combinations. For that to work, I'd have to write two lines of JavaScript, one for detecting key down events and one for key up events. It's definitely doable, but I didn't need it. So with one line of JavaScript and one simple event listener in our Livewire component, we now have key bindings that are handled server-side. Next, I wanted to add the ability to add a seed. And whenever you use the same seed, the board is shuffled exactly the same way. PHP 8.2 added a new randomizer class, and one of the supported randomizer algorithms is the merge and twister one, which takes a seed. Instead of using a simple random function, I decided to use PHP's new and shiny randomizer API. I only had to write a couple lines of code and pass in a seed as an optional URL parameter. Now it's time for the big one. We're going to write a new game. Now, if you remember from the previous video, all game logic is handled by that board class. There's also a Livewire component that simply passes events to that board class. And there's a tile, which is basically a value object that represents a given tile. So in this variation of Mahjong, I will create kind of a endless board. There are 5 rows of tiles, and whenever a row is completely empty, a new line is added on top. I'll keep track of my score, and the higher it is, the more complex newly added lines will be. So if I built my previous version correctly, I don't need to change anything to our Livewire component. It's simply passing events to a board, and I don't need to make any changes to my tile class because we're using exactly the same kind of tiles. But I will need to re-implement large parts of my board class. So I made a copy of that board class. I called it shortboard, and I started changing things. The most important changes are in the init method, which adds a number of fixed lines. And there's a new handle empty rows method that will check whether new lines should be added after return. And finally, there's the create new row method that will generate a new row based on a random mask. You probably remember those from the last video. Now, the mask's difficulty increases the higher your score. Okay, I also added a score field, but that's rather trivial. Whenever you match a pair or complete a row, your score is increased. Let me show you what it looks like. Pretty nice, right? Okay, but here's the biggest question. We copied all our board's code to shortboard and change it until it works. And I think that's a good strategy for prototyping. Don't focus on abstractions, first get something to work. But now that it works, I think we should closely evaluate our design. There's quite a lot of code duplication between these classes. What's the best way to get rid of it? You might think inheritance, right? Make an abstract board class that contains methods like can select, get, remove, shuffle, stuff like that. But is that really the best solution? I think that too often we use, or rather abuse, inheritance to get rid of code duplication. It often leads to complex code with lots of abstraction and hooks you need to know about. I like to compare it to adjusting different knobs and pulls to make everything work together. Think about it conceptually. Are these two boards really the same game that happen to differ in a couple of areas, or are they two entirely different games that happen to share some common functionality. I realize that this is more of a philosophical question than anything else, but I do believe that applying inheritance here wouldn't be the best solution. It would work, but not in the best way possible. So what's next? I have a couple solutions in mind, but I could be wrong as well. So I want to ask you, what do you think is the best solution here? Let me know in the comments and let's make an agreement. If this video reaches 600 likes, we'll definitely make a follow-up version and fix everything in this project. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.